Every night, millions of people heard Elias Vale sing. They screamed his name beneath oceans of golden lights. They sang his lyrics in crowded streets. They called him the voice of a generation. But every night, after the final applause faded and the stadium doors closed, Elias returned to a room so quiet that he could hear the clock ticking. Millions of people knew his voice. Almost no one knew him. Then, on a rainy night when Elias had almost stopped believing that music could surprise him, a message appeared on his private music account. There was no name, no photograph, no introduction, only 4 lines of lyrics. Elias read them once, then again. Something about the words made his chest tighten. They described the strange loneliness of being surrounded by people and still feeling invisible. The feeling was so precise that Elias slowly sat down at his piano. He played a few notes. Then he answered, "Who wrote this?" The reply came several minutes later. "Someone who does not want to be famous." Elias smiled. For the first time that day, it was a real smile. He wrote back, "Then why send it to me?" The answer appeared almost immediately. "Because you sound like someone who understands." That was how it began. The anonymous songwriter called himself Noah. Elias never learned whether that was his real name. And most importantly, they would never meet. Elias thought the last rule was ridiculous. Noah disagreed. He believed that some things were beautiful only because they were allowed to remain untouched. Fame had a way of changing people, so they would keep their friendship where it belonged, inside the music. At first, they exchanged nothing more than melodies and lyrics. Then the messages became longer. Elias sent recordings at midnight. Noah replied before sunrise. They argued about verses. They laughed over terrible melodies. They challenged each other. And slowly, without realizing it, they began telling each other things they had never told anyone else. Elias admitted that sometimes he hated walking into a room and knowing everyone already had an opinion about him. Noah confessed that he had spent years hiding his songs because he believed nobody would care about the person who wrote them. Elias told him that talent did not need permission. Noah told Elias that being famous did not mean he had to stop being human. Their first song together was supposed to be a small experiment. Instead, it became a worldwide sensation. People cried when they heard it. Couples played it at weddings. Strangers sent messages about how the song had helped them through difficult days. Elias received awards. The song climbed every chart. But when reporters asked where the lyrics came from, Elias gave the same answer. "From someone who understands me." Noah stayed invisible, and for a while that was enough, until Victor Crane discovered the truth. Victor had managed Elias's career for years. He was polished, intelligent, charming, and terrifyingly good at understanding what people wanted. When he learned that an unknown songwriter was responsible for Elias's most successful music, he did not see a friendship. He saw a weakness. Victor found Noah. He offered him money, then fame, then a contract promising that Noah's name would finally be known around the world. Noah refused. Victor smiled as though he had expected it. He asked Noah why he was willing to remain invisible. Noah answered that the songs mattered more than his name. Victor left without arguing. But his silence was more frightening than anger. A few weeks later, something changed. Elias received a message from Noah. It was cold, short, almost cruel. Elias stared at the screen for a long time. He replied, asking what had happened. No answer came. The next morning, Noah received a message that seemed to come from Elias. It told him their partnership had become inconvenient. It said Elias wanted to work with professional writers now. Noah read it 3 times. Then he closed his laptop. Neither man knew Victor had gained access to their private communication. He had carefully changed the messages. Not enough to make the deception obvious. Just enough to make 2 people who trusted each other begin to doubt. Weeks passed. The music stopped. Elias became quieter. Noah stopped writing. And the world noticed. Fans wondered why Elias had suddenly lost the magic that had defined his music. Victor told everyone that the mysterious songwriter had simply moved on. But Elias did not believe him, because there was something about Noah's silence that felt wrong. One evening, Elias returned to the old recording studio where they had created their first song. The building was almost empty. Rain tapped softly against the windows. He sat at the piano and played the first melody Noah had ever sent him. One note, then another. Then a quiet voice came from the hallway. The next line of the melody. Elias stopped breathing. He turned. A young man stood in the doorway. He was holding a worn notebook against his chest. His dark hair was slightly wet from the rain. His eyes were nervous. And somehow, even though Elias had never seen his face, something about him felt familiar. The young man whispered one word. Elias. Elias stood. Noah slowly stepped into the room. For 3 years they had spoken through screens. For 3 years they had imagined each other without ever knowing the truth. And now the truth was standing less than 10 feet away. Elias looked at the notebook in Noah's hands. 4 lines were written across the open page. The same 4 lines that had changed his life 3 years earlier. Elias finally understood. Noah had been here all along. Not in some distant city. Not behind some mysterious wall. He had been living above an old bookshop only a few streets from the studio. Elias had passed that bookshop countless times. Sometimes he had even seen Noah sitting by the window. Neither of them had known. Noah lowered his eyes. He said he had come to say goodbye. He believed their music had brought Elias nothing but trouble. Elias walked closer. For once, he did not care about the rules. He did not care about the cameras waiting outside. He did not care about Victor. He only cared that the person who had understood his heart better than anyone was standing in front of him. Elias asked Noah why he had never told him the truth. Noah looked at him with tears in his eyes. Because I was afraid you would see me differently. Elias smiled sadly. Then you should have given me the chance. The silence between them felt different now. Not empty. Full. 3 years of words had suddenly become one room. Noah laughed nervously. Elias laughed too. For the first time, they were not 2 voices behind screens. They were simply 2 people standing beside the same piano. And Elias realized something. The promise had never really been about avoiding each other. It had been about protecting the place where they could be honest. But perhaps honesty did not have to disappear just because the distance did. Elias reached for Noah's hand. Noah hesitated. Then he held it. Neither of them said anything. They didn't need to. The door suddenly opened. Victor stood there. His expression changed when he saw them together. He had lost control of the story. Victor admitted that he had manipulated their messages. He had wanted them separated because their friendship had become more valuable than his contracts. He believed that if Elias and Noah trusted each other again, neither would need him. Victor was right. But he had misunderstood one thing. He thought their greatest strength was the music. It wasn't. It was trust. Elias ended his contract that night. Victor threatened to destroy his career. Elias simply walked away. For the first time since becoming famous, he chose something without asking what it would cost him. He chose the truth. The following week, Elias stood before thousands of people. The audience expected another performance. Instead, Elias walked to the microphone and told them about Noah. He told them about the person who had written the songs everyone loved. He told them that Noah had never wanted fame. He had only wanted his music to reach someone who needed it. Then Elias turned toward the entrance. Noah stood there, terrified. Elias held out his hand. Noah slowly walked toward him. The stadium became completely silent. When Noah reached the stage, Elias took his hand. This time, there was no screen between them. No secret account. No hidden name. No promise keeping them apart. Just the 2 of them. Elias introduced Noah as his songwriting partner. Then, after a quiet pause, he introduced him as the person who had taught him what it meant to be truly understood. Noah looked at him. His eyes filled with tears, and he smiled. Together, they performed the song that had started everything. The melody was familiar, but it sounded different now, because the secret was gone. The song was no longer about 2 lonely people searching for someone who understood them. It was about 2 people who had finally found each other. When the final note faded, the audience rose as one. The applause rolled through the stadium like thunder. Noah squeezed Elias's hand. Elias squeezed back. Months later, Noah's name appeared beside Elias's on every album. He still preferred quiet mornings above the old bookshop. Elias still performed beneath thousands of lights. But whenever the world became too loud, they returned to the little studio where everything had begun. Sometimes they wrote. Sometimes they argued over melodies. Sometimes they simply sat beside each other and listened to the rain. And on one particular evening, Noah looked at the old piano and laughed. They had spent 3 years promising never to meet. Elias smiled. And he told Noah that it had been the best promise they had ever broken. Because millions of people had fallen in love with their music. But neither of them had understood what the songs were really doing. They were leading two lonely hearts toward the same place. Toward the same piano. Toward the same moment. Toward each other. And sometimes the person you are searching for is not waiting somewhere far away. Sometimes they are already closer than you think. Sometimes fate simply has to break one little promise before two people finally find the courage to be seen. If you were Elias, would you have broken the promise and finally met Noah? Or would you have stayed anonymous to protect the music? Tell me your answer in the comments. And if you enjoyed Elias and Noah's story, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next emotional BL story. Because sometimes the person you are meant to find is already closer than you think.